Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Evolving Demand for Product Owner Skills. We are so excited you have joined us today. I see some of y'all have already been doing it, but while we give people a few more minutes to join us, we'd love if you dropped in the attendee chat where you're joining us from today. I myself am joining from a very sunny Denver, Colorado. We're still holding on to summer. We're edging towards fall, but it is wonderful here today. And then Evan, you're down in Melbourne. You're in Australia.
It is still dark outside, so I can't say that it's a sunny day, but hopefully the sun will come out before too long.
All right, I'm seeing a lot of the US announcing South Africa, Portugal, Romania, Sweden. We are really, every time we do these, I don't know why I let it surprise me, but I'm always so surprised to see just how global of an audience we can get, because I will be the first to admit, I don't know if I would join a webinar early in the morning unless it was with a really cozy cup of coffee and a blanket, but that's just for those of us nocturnal people. All right, we are gonna go ahead and get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody joining us from around the globe. My name is Molly Lord, and I am a member of staff at Scrum Alliance, and I am so excited to welcome you to today's webinar, The Evolving Demand for Product Owner Skills, hosted by the wonderful Evan Leybourn from the Business Agility Institute. In case you haven't already downloaded it, we have recently released the Product Owner Skills in the New World of Work Specialty Report. I keep my copy on my desk. This is a follow-up to a report we did last October looking at skills in the new world of work. So what skills organizations are looking for, what skill sets employees need to develop, really what's changing in the world of work today. And we were so excited to do some additional research into both Scrum Master skills and Product Owner skills. So really quickly, if you'll stick with me for a minute, I'd love to introduce Scrum Alliance to you all. For those of you who are not familiar, maybe you have one of our certifications, but you're not quite sure who we are, or maybe you just need a little refresher. So we are the first of our kind not-for-profit that serves a global community of professionals. We partner with world-class trainers to provide in-demand professional certifications. We were established in 2001, shortly after the signing of the Agile Manifesto. And to date, we have issued over 1,876,000 certifications. And a really exciting piece of news today, if you were subscribed to our emails, you might have seen this. We launched our very first on-demand e-learning opportunity for you today. So if you need a refresher on your Scrum skills, we are proudly offering Scrum Essentials. So head to scrumalliance.org to find out more about that and to get a little refresh on your Scrum skills. And just a quick overview of other member benefits. You have access to our Learning Journey courses. You get connected to our global community through events like this. You also get discounts to our regional Scrum gatherings and our global Scrum gatherings, as well as access to some really cool tools like the Retrium Retrospective tool and the Comparative Agility tool. Before I hand it over, just a quick tour of the webinar console that you'll get to experience today. So down in the bottom left is our Q&A box. You can throw any questions in there that you would like Evan to answer, or if you have tech questions, logistic questions, please throw it in there and I will answer them to the best of my ability throughout the session. We will do a moderated Q&A at the end. If you don't have your copy of the skills report handy, we have it for you. Just hop into the related content section and you can grab a PDF of the report to follow along with Evan. Most of y'all have already found it, but we do have an attendee chat where you can connect and chat and share thoughts with your fellow attendees today. And finally, and I think some of y'all have found this as well, we have a reactions tool. So throw up some emojis for us throughout the presentation, give us an idea of what things are sticking out to you, what's going through your mind. That'd be great. And then before I hand it over, one final note, this session is being recorded and you will receive a link to the on-demand recording tomorrow via email. And if you are a Scrum Alliance member, we will also be sending out a link to auto-claim your Scrum Education Unit for attending this webinar in that same email. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Evan.
Well, thank you, Molly. I'm excited to be here yet again. I don't know if some of you were here last week when we presented the findings for the Scrum Master skills. If you were, you'll have an idea as to what to expect. But broadly speaking, we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or thereabouts exploring the findings of this study and what it means for you as a product owner or you as a trainer or educator of product owners, or if this is just a topic that you're interested in and or perhaps a career that you're looking for. Now, the findings were different. So the patterns that were occurring globally for Scrum Masters were similar in some regards, but actually somewhat still quite unique for product owners. And we're going to look at what it means in this industry and what it means for you specifically. Please feel free to add questions through the Q&A throughout the presentation. And yeah, let's have a little bit of fun. As Molly very kindly introduced, I am based out of Melbourne, Australia, land of fantastic coffee and terrible weather. But really what I want to highlight as well is, whilst my current role is the head of thought leadership and advocacy for the Business Agility Institute, I have had multiple careers over my life. Not multiple jobs, well, I've definitely had multiple jobs, but multiple careers. My first job was dressing up in a koala suit and harassing tourists for donations. And from there, I've done even more crazy things. But there was a study by, forgive me, I forget, I think it was OECD, that said that the next generation, Gen Alpha, is going to have 7 careers during their working life. Not 7 jobs, 7 careers. And that is, I think, very telling. Myself, I've had 4 careers over my working life, and this is a huge benefit to yourself as individuals, but also a huge benefit to your employers. And one of the things that we are going to talk about is to get you to start thinking about your career and your career development less in terms of a linear pathway and more in terms of the combination of skills that you bring with you from all of your experience, from every career you've had, into the jobs that you have today and the jobs that you might have tomorrow. I can tell you that there are skills that I learned dressing up in a koala suit and harassing tourists that I still use today. Not the harassing tourists or dressing up in a koala suit, but certainly more how do you engage and how do you speak to people who you don't know? Because if you're trying to get a donation, you've got to connect incredibly quickly. And that's a skill that I have used in every career since then. So on that, you don't care about me and my careers, let's talk about your careers. Let's talk about what it means for product owners. Now, as Molly said, please, if you have not had a chance to read the report, you can download it. The link is in the interface for this webinar platform, so you probably don't need what's on the slide. Broadly speaking, the goal of this research, what we were trying to do, was to understand the skills necessary, the human skills, the soft skills, communication and influence that alongside the functional or hard skills or work skills or technical skills required by companies in the product owners that they are recruiting or that they have on staff. And our goal is twofold. One, to help those companies who are trying to recruit product owners understand what they could be looking for, but also to help you as product owners to understand what it is that you need to develop as skills to be more attractive to organizations, to help you progress in your personal learning journey. Now, exactly as Molly said, this is built on the work that we did with the Scrum Alliance last year on the skills in the new world of work. We won't go through the details. That was published last November. Molly, correct me if I'm wrong. But if you have not had a chance, I'd also encourage you to download and have a look at that. That looks at skills in a much broader perspective rather than specifically in the role of product owner. But let's now get straight into product ownership. What are companies saying when we ask them about the product owners that they are recruiting? So, much like the Scrum Master study, what we have found is that there is a dichotomy of demand. There is a high demand for product ownership, but at the same time, companies struggle to fill that demand. In fact, what they say is actually more challenging to fill a product owner role than it is to fill a Scrum Master role. This is despite the fact that, yes, the market is down. Yes, there is a slightly lower demand for product ownership. And just as a side note, for those of you who were in the previous webinar, product ownership demands, when we look at all of the agile specialist roles, right, product owners, Scrum Masters, agile coaches, and others, product owners are the most stable role in that in the industry. So where demand for agile coaching has tanked, where demand for Scrum Masters is down, demand for product owners is down, but nowhere near as much as the others. And it's actually relatively flat in comparison. But despite that, companies are saying that they're getting, on average, 70 applications per role, between 40 and 100 on average. But even despite that, with 100 applications, 66% of organizations are saying that it is very challenging to find the right candidates. And we'll talk about why that is, and for you, if you're a product owner, what it means for your skill development, for your professional development, that will make you more attractive to these organizations. What I would also mention, I've already mentioned that this is less overwhelming than Scrum Masters. Now, what has been the shift? So there are three key changes that have emerged in the hiring and the recruitment of product owners, or the role of product owners and the responsibilities of product owners. So number one, the strict definition of the responsibilities of a product owner are relatively narrow. But a lot of organizations are looking at the role of product owner more in a strategic lens, as in they are expecting product owners to take on strategic responsibilities, both in terms of product and sometimes in the broader organizational strategy. That comes with it a set of complementary skills and responsibilities around stakeholder engagement, product vision. Companies are asking for product owners who are better able to take the system of the organization and the product development, all of the interplaying elements of product development, and manage or be responsible and accountable for all of it. Not just once every 2 weeks you have to refine the backlog. I'm an old school agilist. I still sometimes slip into the old school terminology. I've been doing this for 20 years. That's way too long. Number three, the common complaint, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that a lot of product owner candidates that companies are interviewing or that they see resumes for have strong tactical product experience. They know how to be a good product owner. They know how to manage a backlog. They know how to make product feature trade-off decisions. They know how to engage with customers and work through the product refinement and the product review sessions to build good products. But what they're lacking and what is driving this dichotomy of demand are those strategic skills. And that is, I think, if you have to drop off the webinar right now, that is probably the key takeaway for you. And please don't drop off the webinar right now. I'm not encouraging you to do so. But that is very much the most important point that I would like to give you, especially for those of you who are product owners and for those who are training and educating product owners. Similarly, you're going to have to start to amplify that strategic, the business strategy and product strategy skills. Now, there is a problem, and it's not with product owners, but it's with companies. And that is, companies are really bad at defining what a product owner is. And we see this, there is if we look at, say, Scrum Masters, companies know how a Scrum Master fits into their organization. There's a career path. It all makes sense. With companies, a product owner job description, if you're applying for a job, will give you all of the responsibilities of that product owner, and they'll look the same, but it will lack clarity in things like level in the organizational hierarchy. One organization will treat a product owner as a senior role. It's a management, and in some cases, an executive position. And in other organizations, it is a fairly junior. I don't want to say it's not an admin role, because it still has operational and strategic responsibilities, but it is very much a more operational role. Stakeholder management. Some organizations expect product owners to own all the relationships around a product, whereas other organizations have product managers who are responsible for the stakeholder management, or project managers who are responsible for stakeholder manager. So the product owners have one or two stakeholders that they engage with on a regular basis, but they're not responsible for the stakeholders more broadly. Product scope. Some organizations will have an army of product owners, each responsible for an element of a product rather than the entirety of the product. Other organizations will treat a product owner as they are the product owner, and putting emphasis on the ownership word of that. P&L accountability, profit and loss accountability. Some product owners actually own the financial control of the product. In other organizations, they don't. And this lack of clarity means that when a candidate is reading a job description for a product owner, these things, and these four were the four most common that came up, but these things are so, they are assumed. Right? The hiring manager, the hiring organization has in their mind this picture of a product owner, which has its highness in the org hierarchy or low in the org hierarchy. It has broad responsibilities or narrow responsibilities. It owns the product versus manages the product. And it's got this very, those assumptions don't make it into the job description. And that's part of this dichotomy of demand. This is part of the frustration that hiring managers and recruiting companies have, is that they want product owners that fit this magical set of capabilities and responsibilities, but you as a product owner don't know. If you as a product owner are fairly new, you're not comfortable with owning P&L, you're not looking for a top executive role, and they bring you in for interview, it's going to be a very awkward interview. They're going to go, oh, we shouldn't have interviewed that person. And they probably wouldn't actually interview you. On the other hand, the same job description for another organization, if you are very senior in your role and you're used to having an ownership role, and you come in and they talk about product ownership, and worst case scenario, they even give you the job, and you walk in and discover that it is glorified product administration, right? That is going to be very frustrating for you and frustrating for them. So it's one of the advice, and not so much for you as, or for those of you who are product owners, but certainly for companies recruiting product owners, is to get clarity, right? To make it very clear in those job descriptions what it is that a product owner should be, or what they expect a product owner to be, because there is always going to be variation. Anyway, I'm going to pull back because I got a bit ranty there. Let's talk about some of the trends. Broadly speaking, demand for product ownership remains relatively strong. North America has the strongest demand in the tech and financial services organizations. And for they're looking at tech skills. That's an interesting one, by the way, sorry. In tech organizations, one of the complementary skill sets that product owners are expected to have is a technical background. They're not expected to cut code. They're not expected to do code reviews, but they are expected to understand what goes into building a technical product. And that kind of makes sense, though other industries don't tend to have the same requirements. Other industries tend to be a little bit more, if you're a good product owner, it doesn't matter your product background. Now, in Latin America, South America, Central America, Latin America, we're looking for, or companies are looking for Scrum Masters that are adaptable. They're looking more for the human skills than the technical skills, in large part because all of the organizations that we interviewed, not all, but most of the organizations that we interviewed or surveyed did not have enough budget to fill all of the product owner roles that were needed. So there was very much this need for a product owner to be able to move inside the organization and take on multiple product responsibilities in multiple areas of the business in a fairly dynamic nature. Across Europe, it's very much still with the human skills, but more in terms of the cultural and multilingual abilities. Product owner across Europe is expected to engage, again, this is on average, is expected to engage with stakeholders from different countries, not all of whom speak English or French or whatever the primary language of the organization is. Especially, and I will note, in Europe, there is a heavy reliance on outsourcing to Eastern Europe. So this is more in the Western Europe and the UK, outsourcing into Eastern Europe. And the expectation or the ask is that product owners are able to have those ability to operate within multiple cultural contexts as well as multiple languages. Across Asia Pacific, back here at home for me, it goes back to more like North America, that technical experience, strategic thinking, critical analysis. And much like North America, there is a focus on data. Product owners need to be able to use data to make informed decisions, to be more strategic in that product ownership more broadly. Industry-wise, the tech industry, and these, by the way, are the three top industries in terms of demand for product ownership. There are obviously many, many more industries out there, but broadly speaking, there continues to be high demand in tech, financial services, and telecommunications. Tech companies, again, looking for that technical background. Financial services, also looking for people who understand the financial regulations or are able to work within a regulatory environment. Actually, that's an interesting point. Healthcare organizations look for product owners who understand healthcare regulatory environments. Financial services actually more looks for people who know how to engage in regulatory environments, but it doesn't necessarily have to be financial services regulatory environments. So do bear that in mind. If you've got experience in a healthcare industry, financial services organizations will look for that yes, you know how to deal with regulation. They don't expect you to have to absolutely know the regulation straight away. Again, different organizations are different. This is just on average. So that's the global trends. Let's get to the stuff that's actually really interesting. Well, actually, it's all interesting, but the skills. This is what companies are looking for when they are recruiting product owners. Now, in the center there, 100% of companies are looking for product ownership skills in their product owners. That probably shouldn't be that much of a surprise to anyone. We also add in there agile acumen. Agile acumen is a phrase that we coined in the skills report last year. And this is one of those fundamental, let me take a step back. So very quickly, last November, when we published the Skills in the New World of Work report with the Scrum Alliance, one of the key findings was that the second highest in demand functional skill set was the ability to work in an agile way, work with agility. And that demand was present whether it was a Scrum Master, a product owner, a developer, an accountant, a marketer. Companies are expecting and recruiting for people who can work with agility. And we call this agile acumen. Now, of perhaps no surprise, 100% of organizations hiring product owners expect agile acumen in their product owners. Right? Those are just gimmies. However, what's more interesting are the complementary skill sets that come out. The top functional skills that companies are looking for: technical skills, product leadership, business and domain expertise. Now, product leadership is not really that much of a surprise. Technical skills comes out very strongly, especially in technology firms. And that, like I said before, is the ability or the background to understand how a tech product gets created. The business and domain expertise comes out very strongly. And in fact, it's one of the most sought after skills. Sorry, it's one of the hardest to find skills. And that is an understanding of how business works. This is the business, it's you know how their business works, you know the industry that they're in, and it connects very closely with that business acumen, which comes up as number 4 in that functional skill set, which again is just, you have experience. Maybe you've run a business, maybe you have had P&L responsibilities. And those organizations that are looking for that business acumen, that business and domain expertise, are generally speaking the ones who put their product owners higher in the organization, the more senior, more strategically oriented, versus those that are not. Now, from a human skill, what you might call a soft skill standpoint, communication comes out as number 1. That should not surprise anybody, A, because it's such a strong, it is so important for a product owner to be able to engage with stakeholders and everyone else. But it also shouldn't be a surprise because it's been the number 1 skill in demand in all of our reports, as well as 90% of the skills reports out there in the world today. Companies desperately need people with strong written, verbal, presentation skills. What I will add here, which is somewhat unique to product owners, is the communication skills here are very strongly linked into the ability to negotiate and the ability to sway or influence others. And that's kind of the subtext of those communication skills. Mindset behaviors is, and I will be honest, is a little bit of a weird skill. This is things like adaptability. These are things like, and actually no, I'll just pause there for a second, because adaptability is pretty much what makes up the majority of that 38%. For those of you who have seen the skills report will know that at the back there is an appendix of skills and sub-skills. And this is just a bit of research background. When we talk to organizations, whether via survey or whether via interview, and this was done in large part via interview, we actually technically look for the sub-skills and then we roll them up into the broader skills that the groupings, because there are hundreds of sub-skills. But it means that we have data at that sub-skill level. So mindset behaviors, adaptability, curiosity, learning mindset, confidence. These are all things that can be learned, all things that can be developed. But it's that adaptability that is like number one. And by a very large margin, number one of what companies are looking for inside their product owners. Now, there's more: teamwork and critical thinking, leadership again. I would encourage you to have a look at these, and I would encourage you to have a think about your own careers. Because I mentioned at the beginning that you are the sum of all the things that you've done. The learning and the education that you've had to become a product owner, or that you are giving product owners, is valuable, is highly valuable, but is insufficient. It's everything else that you've done throughout your careers, plural, that you bring into this role that makes you uniquely qualified for the role that you're in. And many of these skills, especially the human skills, come not from what you're doing now as a product owner, but come from what you did before in the last career or the career before that. In my case, dressing up in a koala suit, or being an engineer, or any one of a number of things that I have done in my career. But what about into the future? Now, this is where the role of product owners gets a bit messy, because very few organizations have a concept of a senior product owner. For those of you who were in the Scrum Master presentation, you'll know that there was a very clear career path from a Scrum Master to a senior Scrum Master. A lot of organizations had developed that structured progression. These are the skills that you need, this is what you need to do, and these are the responsibilities. And in fact, in some organizations, a senior Scrum Master is almost indistinguishable from an Agile coach. In other organizations, a senior Scrum Master is indistinguishable from a development lead. But regardless of sort of how they define it, most organizations have that path. But product owners, and again, this is on average, different organizations are different, but on average, very few organizations actually very few organizations have a role for a senior product owner, let alone define a pathway for them. This means that product owners, and those of you who are product owners, generally will transition into either product management or product design roles or business leadership roles. And I would be encouraging those of you who are product owners to have a think about your next career step, what it is that you would like to be doing. And if it is a progression from product ownership into something else, I would be looking at these two paths. Now, they are different skills. They're not mutually exclusive, but they are different skills. And so in terms of your own professional development, I would be looking at which path are you most interested in and pursuing the skills to develop the skills that are needed in those additional roles as well. What I will also add to that is the product owners tend to have a relatively long tenure. They are, in most organizations, still fairly senior roles. So a Scrum Master may transition into a senior Scrum Master within 3 to 5 years. We spoke to product owners who'd been in that role, happily in that role, for 7 to, in some cases, over 10 years. Very happily in that senior role, doing all the things that they enjoy doing. So these are not at this stage, again, in most organizations, because these are senior roles, these are slower to move and slower to transition into something new. but what they're transitioning into. Like I said, product management is a common one, leadership and management positions. But we also see when we interviewed product owners that there was a desire to transition to agile coaching roles. There was a desire to continue as a product owner, whether or not you get a new job title, but just to be a better, more experienced product owner. And what we also found was that these product owners were often looking to transition to different companies where the product owners were more senior or put in a more senior position. So even though the job title doesn't change, right, the responsibilities do, right? Not within the company, but in a new company. And then lastly, there was a variety of what we sort of grouped as specialized or strategic roles in an organization. Everything from chief of staff to product design and so forth. There were too many of them to list out, so just kind of just like bundle them into that specialized and strategic roles. So these are kind of the career paths. This is what we heard from you, from the product owners. But from the companies, what we heard was there were some gaps. And for those of you wanting to be better product owners where you are, right, or perhaps to move into product ownership, the key areas that the companies have asked of us, number one, practical experience. Right? A lot of companies complained or lamented that the people that they were interviewing had certifications and book learning, but lacked experience. Now, the irony there is they have to get hired to get the experience, and we always, this is the this is the frustration of anyone who's been in the job market, is that it's like they expect all this experience, but they're not willing to, often not willing to invest in it. But just be mindful that you likely have the experience. You just need to be much better at showing that experience inside your resumes to get into those interviews. Business acumen came up very strongly as this is strategic thinking, financial management, value management. These business skills were lacking, or companies reported were lacking in a lot of product owners. And I'm not suggesting you go and do an MBA, but there is definitely value in some of those core business skills. And of course, we're from the Business Agility Institute, so we would encourage you to think of them from a business agility standpoint. But regardless, if you are approaching product ownership purely from a product standpoint without the business perspective, you are leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And that's a key area that you need to develop, or if you're an educator, you need to develop in the people that you're teaching. Cultural adaptability. Again, this came up very strongly across Europe and South and Latin America. But even within North America, the expectation is that a product owner should be, it's a senior role, it should be able to deal with different team dynamics, different environments, different kind of product environments, and the ability to have that adaptability, that mindset to be able to go, great, all right, let's learn how this team, this context, this cultural context operates, and let's adapt to work within that. And one of the complaints we heard from a couple of organizations is that some of the product owners that they had hired came in with a level of arrogance around, oh, this is how you do product ownership, this is how we're going to work, and kind of tried to steamroll the organization, and it didn't go well. In the few organizations that were talking about it to that degree, those product owners lost their jobs. Fourthly is the domain expertise. And so this is experience in the relevant industry or product domain. Again, like practical experience, the irony is that if a company is looking for someone with financial services experience and you don't have that, then, well, like you can only get it by being hired by a financial services organization. So one of the key things here is to be able to highlight why your experience in whatever domain, whether it's an industry or a product domain, is transferable or relevant to this other organization. And it's about and this is where communication comes in very strongly. It's about being able to bridge the gap between what you have and what they think they need. And I'll say think because in all practicality, that industry and product domain experience is probably the easiest thing to learn on the job, right? There's a lot of things that are much harder to learn that you already have and can already bring into it. Now, lastly, the key skills. These percentages here, business acumen, 75%, product leadership, 71%. These are 75% of organizations who were looking for a business acumen said they couldn't find it. Now, if you remember back a couple of pages ago, business acumen was 23% of organizations. So 75% of those companies say they cannot find product owners with good business acumen. 71% said they couldn't find product owners with good product leadership, and 62 just good old-fashioned leadership skills. So whilst these are not the most in-demand skill sets, technical skills would be the most in demand, they are the hardest to find, which means if you develop these, whether you are a product owner yourself or you're educating product owners, if you develop these skills, you will stand out, right? You will be much more attractive to organizations than someone without them. So I would be strongly encouraging you to be looking at these complementary skill sets and looking to develop them, well, I suppose as quickly as you can. Now, in summary, right, companies are looking for product owners with a balance of technical knowledge and business acumen. That is probably the key takeaway. It's if you understand the tech, if you understand the product and its unique, if you've got a background in software development, but you're you're becoming a product owner of an engineering like a physical hardware solution, that technical knowledge isn't what they mean. They mean it's got to be contextually relevant, right? If you can develop that or show what that is and bring with it that business acumen, value management, financial management, business skills, that is an unstoppable combination for product owners. In fact, I'll be honest, that's an unstoppable combination for half a dozen roles, not just product owners. So to pretty much wrap up, and we'll go, and I'm on time. What do you know? I thought I was going to be a bit late, but I have a small request. We have the business agility report and the survey for that closes today. Let me correct that. It closes on Friday, whichever day Friday is for you, whether today for me or tomorrow for you. I have a request. It will only take 5 minutes of your time. And if you can, it would really help us. This is the 7th year we've done the business agility report, and it would be hugely beneficial. On that note, Molly, I think we are good for a little bit of Q&A.
All right, let's dive into Q&A. So I think I've now been to enough webinars talking about product ownership that I can predict themes. And one of the themes that I thought would show up did, and it's the concept of product ownership versus product management, which I feel like we've talked about before, Evan. But so someone asked, could you please clarify that with the new shift in demand of product owner skill set, what would be the difference between a product owner and a product manager?
Okay, so I'm not going to give you the book definition. Right? So let me talk about what companies are doing. Oh, no, so I'll give you two answers very quickly. So first of all, we call the skill product leadership. And there are two sub-skills under product leadership: product management and product ownership. And that's product ownership as a skill, not product owner as a role. And let's just be very clear that we do make a distinction between skill or skills and roles. Now, the practical answer to the question is there is no difference if the company doesn't see that there's a difference. And many companies, especially those companies that treat product owners as a very senior set of responsibilities, they see product owners and product managers as the same. In fact, many organizations took their old product managers, gave them some additional agile responsibilities, and just called them product owners. Right now, we know that the practicality, there is differences in the responsibilities of both, but a lot of organizations do not see it. For those organizations that do, however, right, that do make a distinction between them, the product owners, we see this emerge in one of two ways. Either it's a matter of hierarchy. Product owners report to product managers, and it's usually that way around. Sometimes, and in fact, in one of the organizations, product managers reported to the product owner. Again, this is where there's a lack of clarity as to where this role sits. But in other organizations, the product manager sits within the the product development function, and the product owner sits within the business function. So they were aligned and collaborated, but were not functionally or structurally connected in any way other than working for the same company. So there was it's not an easy question to answer, basically because every organization has a slightly different answer to it. And it's part of the confusion for product owners is just when you go for a job interview, you never quite know where it sits in that organization.
All right. So I know earlier on in the webinar, you had mentioned that one of the most vital things that product owners could take away was developing a strategic skill set and, really developing that product strategy. What skills would you recommend for building up the strategic skill sets?
So there's a few different areas there. So when companies are asking for strategic skills, they're looking for individuals who are able to make strategic trade-off decisions. They're looking for people who can connect product goals to business goals, who can define OKRs or product OKRs or product KPIs that are not based on, that are business objective oriented, not just product oriented. They're looking, and to some degree, they're looking for product owners. This is less of a case in product owners than it was for Scrum Masters, but with a lot of organizations laid off their Agile coaches, right? And the Agile coaches had a transformation responsibility. Now, the reality is that organizations, whether or not Agile is a bad word in that organization, or whether or not they believe that they're done, that they're already Agile, companies still need the same thing they've always needed. Right? They need highly effective, customer-centric, iterative ways of working that enable good product development, good products that align with customer need. Now, for those organizations that laid off a lot of Agile coaches, the role went away, but the need, that transformational need, never did. Now, those responsibilities transitioned in many organizations to Scrum Masters. But in some organizations, we also see, and this connects into that with strategic thinking, we see product owners being asked now to help drive organizational change. They're not transformation leaders, and they're not expected to be transformation leaders, they're not expected to be coaching, but they are taking on some of that strategic change responsibility that previously would have been held by, say, enterprise coaches.
All right. So I think this question is referring to when you're discussing the confusion of the product owner role in an organization where it sets what the path looks like. And the question is, I think all these confusions come from the Scrum concept versus the size of the product. Obviously, the Scrum team can't be too large, but the product can be huge, requiring many Scrum teams. In this case, what is the better role arrangement?
So part of this goes into I don't want to get into specific frameworks because there are hundreds of scaling and descaling frameworks out there. All have their pros and cons. Just like the old saying, it's like all models are wrong, but like all models are useful. And I'm paraphrasing and bastardizing that phrase. I'm sorry, but it's a good question. It's a tough one to answer. So let me give you two perspectives, and it really depends on the direction the company is taking. The first is the descaling approach, where yes, you may have hundreds of Scrum teams, but they are semi-autonomous. They own a cohesive piece, and there are minimal dependencies on other teams, other areas of the business, and they have ownership autonomy over their part of the product. Now, in those situations, what we tend to see is product owners sitting inside the business as being the most effective, because they act as a interface between the feature needs in that product domain, in that product space, from those business areas. And so that product domain may engage with multiple business areas, and they may engage with multiple product owners. And so the role, that there's like a coordination role to just ensure that those inputs coming into the product team actually are unified and aligned, but those product owners are sitting in with the business, not in with product. Those organizations that go more with a scaling approach, where it's that team of teams, generally will have product owners sitting within the technology function, and they're quite often so like a small hierarchy of product owners managing and like managing the refining and informing the backlogs of multiple teams. Now, it's not one for one. A product owner is not a full-time job for one team. Again, different organizations have different responsibilities, but generally speaking, it's a small team that would look after a large number. But generally, where you have teams of teams, you have product owners of product owners. You generally have, it mirrors that hierarchy. There's no good or bad here. There are definitely better approaches than others, but it's what I'm describing here is sort of what we're seeing in the research as to how companies are structuring their product owners when they're scaling. But it's a hard question to answer because there's no easy pattern to identify. There are several patterns that organizations have been adopting. And I'm sorry, that's not a great answer. I can't give you a great answer to that question. It is a tough one.
It is a very tough one. So we have a great question about more of the research methodology behind this study. So how much did the research plug into the product management community versus strictly product ownership, if at all?
It did not plug into the product management community explicitly at all. When we interviewed companies, we were interviewing companies who were hiring product owners, specific, and those that the reason I use the word explicitly is because some of the organizations, when we interviewed them, it's like they didn't have a product manager concept. It was like product owner, product manager were the same thing in their mind. So we didn't plug into the product management community. What we were looking for is, if you're hiring a product owner, someone with that job title, what exactly are you looking for? So it was very specific to that space, which of course, as we found, is a very broad space.
All right, we have 6 minutes left, so I think we can make it through 1 or 2 more questions. So what are your thoughts on companies that make the product owner and Scrum Master a hybrid role?
Oh, please don't. We saw that came up in a couple of interviews. The Scrum guides again, I'm old school. I still remember Pig and Chicken as a comic. I don't know if that's still a thing, but they are very much they have completely separate responsibilities and accountabilities inside an organization. They should not be brought together. This is no longer research. This is now Evan's opinion. Right? Product owners should represent the business. I think personally, product owners should be in the business. They should be owned like that. Their line manager should be in the business, not in the product. And we interviewed some where the product owners they were tech staff. They were glorified administrators who were just refining the backlog because it's the thing that you do every sprint. And those roles were, I don't want to say they were pointless, like there was value in that, but they weren't product owners in the way most of us would define the role, right? I get organizations are trying to cut costs. I get that an organization goes, oh, these agile roles, let's just bring them together, but they are fundamentally separate. If an organization, and I'm sorry for the product owners on the call for what I'm about to say, I would rather that product ownership was not a role inside an organization, but was a responsibility of someone in the business, than to bring that role and merge it with a Scrum Master. So I'm sorry for the product owners in the call, because I've just said that I'd rather you didn't have a job. But to be fair, I would rather you did a good job in a good organization than, yes, that. Sorry, I got ranty. It's a bad idea. Please don't do it.
No, that's great. And I will say I was watching for the reactions, and we got a couple hearts, but no angry faces. So I don't think you annoyed anybody too much, which is really good. All right, I think we have time for one final question. Is adaptability aligned to the agile skill you mentioned earlier in the presentation, meaning the ability to adapt or pivot your plan when market/organization change requires?
Yes, but they are separate skills. So adaptability is a human skill, a soft skill. It sits underneath mindset behaviors, and it can be learned. Right? And even though technically mindset behaviors are not skills in the strict definition, we include them because they can be learned and developed. And so creativity, the others, which I'm drawing a blank for the moment, but so adaptability is the human skill. Agile acumen is the functional skill. It is the ability to work in an agile way. And I don't mean work in Scrum or Kanban or safe or less. It doesn't matter the framework, but it's the ability to work, to iterate, to inspect and adapt. It is the functional side of it. So yes, they are connected, because to have agile acumen or to work in an agile way, you should have the mindset of adaptability, right? But one is the human skill, the other is the functional, practical skill.
All right, I think that is a great piece of knowledge to leave us with as we close out today. I want to thank, first of all, Evan, for another wonderful presentation. It is always wonderful to get deep dives into these reports and to hear more about it and to just, learn a little more. And a huge thank you to everybody who logged in and attended the webinar today. We're always so grateful when you are here, and we love getting to share these webinars with you. As I said at the beginning, in case you missed, this webinar has been recorded, and you will get a link to the recording tomorrow in your inbox. You will also receive a link to auto-claim your Scrum Education Unit if you are a member of Scrum Alliance. This helps you towards renewal. And just a reminder, in order to claim it, you do need to be logged into your Scrum Alliance dashboard for it to credit your account. With that said, just another quick pitch. If you need a Scrum refresher, please do not hesitate to check out our Scrum Essentials course. But with that said, I just want to thank everybody again, and we will see you at our next webinar. Bye.